Okay, back to the topic. So could this one be our conclusion that we just when we discuss the use cases, we come along with the six that might be related, and then we we could contact that SIG or working on that SIG for that period without overreaching. Does sound reasonable?
Sounds pretty reasonable to me. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Now, one question I had about this was, what's the thinking about Istio in particular? It seems like a lot of us, or a lot of even the Kubernetes community, also has a lot of interest in Istio. Should that be completely out of scope? Should we look into making sure that what we're doing is somewhat compatible, or at least not incompatible with Istio? Do we even care as a working group?
Well, I would suggest we include Istio and anything that related, actually, because there are mechanism that Istio could use Kubernetes, right? We need to make sure that compliance. So yeah, well, personally, I would suggest we keep anything Istio related within our scope.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Okay, great. So the last item of these items, sub-item, I think it would be better that we could have a official workgroup session at Cloud Native at KubeCon, basically. So does any of you guys know who to talk to? Or maybe I can go ask him, figure it out.
I can find a link. I might be able to find a link for you. I know the multi-cluster folks were setting one up, and
great.
Yeah, I can find a link, I think.
Nice. Okay. So next, I think we already kind of answered this, right? This should be use case triggered. So should we identify on a high level that we could show people these are the SIGs or working groups might related, or should we stick to the plan that we just make it use case trigger? Might be nice that we provide a overview of the related SIGs. I don't know. What are you guys thinking?
From my perspective, the more things that we can ground directly in use cases, the more relevant and kind of better off we're going to be.
Okay. So, yeah.
Perhaps we can also just encourage people to go to all the ones that might be relevant. But
encourage people to discover. Okay, great. Okay, next we can moving on the real business. So let's start combing through the design document and start, editing and putting more words or deleting unnecessary words. Okay, I think the lead context will be modified later. This is.
Oops, okay. We lost Howard, I think.
Can you hear me now? I'm back.
Yeah, yes, you're back.
Yeah, it's conference Wi-Fi, so. Oh, Jesus. So first section, the motivation. So as discussed, this section should cover not specifically the scope, but broadly speaking, what the policy working group are aiming at, right? So these are the words that I put it for the earlier proposal. So please review it and see any editing, additions or deletions that we need to make this crystal clear to people.
I mean, we could just be really explicit that, like, the GDPR is coming into effect right around KubeCon, and people are going to start caring even more. But
What
Oh,
when I read the motivation, it's not really clear to me what problem we're trying to solve. Right. We make a couple of statements, that are nominally true. Policy is widely adopted. Current policy components relate to these different things. But like, yeah, what is it that we're trying to change about this, or where's the pain that people have?
So, I think maybe I didn't write it well. So one of the pain points that my personal thinking is that we have many policy-related components that are scattered around, different components within Kubernetes, but it lacks of the overall architecture or conceptual architecture we talked about. So when customers, say for example, like telco customers, if they want to apply Kubernetes for their telco pass, they don't know, what to look at if they want to play around policies, enforce policies for their VNFs or whatever, right?
Wait, so
Yeah,
the problem is that people can't find the policies?
The problem is that there is no overall architecture. People, if they want to figure out what policy support in Kubernetes now, they need to go into a specific, say, networking, and then figure out what network policies are now for a certain version release, right? So my thinking is that from a customer's perspective, they want a big picture that, okay, here is the policy architecture, and here are all the affected components, and we'll guide you around that. For example, for storage, where you can put the QoS, the tiering policies, the whatnot.
yeah, this came up in the multi-tenancy working group, that maybe a lot of the pieces that they actually needed existed, but they had no idea how to find it, manage it, or what it would require to do it, or how to centrally manage all of it. And that was a big concern.
So let me kind of pull on that thread a little bit. Could we just write a book, right? Could somebody just sit down and say, okay, like, I'm going to write the book on Kubernetes policy. It's going to cover all these different use cases, and then you're going to read the book, and then you're going to know all about policy. Like, why is that not the thing that we're doing to fix this? Why is, like, an architecture the thing that's needed?
Yeah, part of the answer is the coordination, right? That we hope this working group could provide. The policies, like the network teams are doing their own way of networking policy. Storage has their way. There's RBAC policy in their language. I think one of the the goals or output of this working group is that we could provide a mechanism of like coordination and collaboration that, you know, these aren't policy silos, that there are like hundreds of ways of figuring out policy in each specific areas. And I don't think we can write that book actually, because it's you know, everything is a silo.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I've heard problem one, it's hard to figure out what all policy capabilities there are. Problem two, even if you know what they are, they have different languages and frameworks and things like that.
Yeah.
Yes, you could write a book, and that might help, but you would probably still need people to go to that from that book and write custom tooling that probably won't be compatible with whatever else and won't necessarily guarantee anything going forward. That answers it.
Yep.
Yeah, and then I think the other piece is that like there are like a lot of like some areas are already extensible and you can plug in like some sort of policy system, but then there are going to be areas that just aren't extensible enough today, or they don't have policy support today. And so like the other goal is to identify those and figure out a path forward there, I think.
So problem three, lack of extensibility.
Yeah.
I think actually the extensibility to me is one of the biggest aspects. I agree with the other statements for sure. I do tend to think that the use cases that are described here would be hard to go and try to implement today, right? I think you could, there are small building blocks of policy in each segment, but to the earlier point, there's not the end-to-end coordination across them. But even if there were, I don't think you would find consistent extensibility in all the different places.
And nor would you be able to say that this one component actually needs something else because of something at the other end. There's kind of no way for you to even design with that kind of thing in mind.
Okay, so Michael, what should I put down for the fourth point?
I think it was just the extensibility. For me, I think that the last one you got was really the one that I think resonates most for me.
Okay.
That it's about driving extensibility to support a fully integrated set of scenarios, or a set of end-to-end scenarios that are really addressing a business problem versus a technical mechanic problem.
Yeah. Okay, great. Okay, any other problems?
I'll go back to auditability as one as well. It's not clear to me that all of the different pieces of policy today would generate the right kind of audit trails. That may be my own ignorance, and maybe Torin or Spike, you guys are deep in other areas. Maybe you've seen more of that, but I think
so
providing,
do you mean audits about what the policy is, or consistent like auditing of how the policy is applied? Does that make sense?
For me, I think it's both. I think it's both. I think you want to think about the privileged operators who can define policy and who can influence. We brought up in the use case the intersection of different roles defining different pieces of policy, and allowing an operator to give a developer or to give a true DevOps team a little bit more control, you know, on these guardrails, right, with these guardrails in place. And then being able to see the audit trail of, because the operator did these things, then the DevOps team could do these things, and that audit trail, just being able to assess, does this meet our guidelines for enforcing GDPR or PCI or any of your favorite compliance standards, or does this make us non-compliant?
I think that you had to ask the question, is itself part of the problem?
I'm sorry, Erica, one more time. I missed that part.
I said, if you had to ask the question, that's part of the problem, right?
Yes. Agreed.
So on the
So
auditing, yeah.
I think Howard, I would phrase that auditability of applying policy and policy enforcement on an ongoing basis.
Right. I mean, a typical use case would be like you want to respond to a subpoena, right? Your company got subpoena for whatever reason. So you need to provide an audit trail of all the policies that were enforced by whom and when those policies got violated, for example, or if they got violated. You need to have a consistent audit trail that would be provable in court. So those are actually pretty real scenarios that occurs for any InfoSec person.
The violation or the attempted violation as well, that's an excellent one, right? Just being able to know for each of these, when was there an access attempt that failed or a network route that failed where you really want to detect malicious behavior also.
Right.
Yeah, so number one is what's the trail of changes that were made to the policy? And then number two is what are the decisions that were made by the policy? Like how is the policy being enforced over time? How did that affect things?
Yep.
So does it non-existing in the current Kubernetes implementation or partially existing?
I mean, like everything else, it's sort of ad hoc right now.
I mean, you could write a bunch of code to figure it out, but it's totally ad hoc.
That's absolutely.
But Spike, Spike, with these 4 points, do you feel, with some wordsmithing around it, that would address your concerns about motivation and even to some extent
absolutely.
implicitly defining
basically
goals as well?
putting this problem, these are the problems that we see, is a really strong way to start off these motivation documents.
So then what we're actually going to do is we're going to use this text twice. We're going to describe it once in the motivation in terms of here's what the problem we see is, or the set of problems that we see are. And then we're going to write a second section of goals to say we want to address problem X, Y, Z, and we'll list out basically the same 4 points and sort of the parameters of what we want to do to solve it.
Yeah. The content and the scope should be more detailed, like you said, bullet points, specific.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, time is almost up. I think we can conclude meeting for today. Thank you very much for the discussion. So for the meeting next week, so I will put the editing in place for the document. So for the meeting next week, we will double check whether for round one motivation is okay, broadly speaking, and then we can moving on to the use cases. Okay, so that we can have a really good pace, rather than dwelling on some paragraph internally. Sounds good.
Sounds good. And where are you capturing the recording as well for the sessions?
I will upload it to the YouTube. So I will write down the links on the meeting note doc. Okay.
Perfect.
I'll provide it later. Yeah, no problem. Sorry for last time, the constant crash on my side.
We can't audit our own meetings.
Oh, we need another working group.
Is there any way we can get the? Is there some way we can get the Zoom thing improved so we don't have to jump calls?
I think Michael mentioned he had enterprise account. Maybe we can use it.
Yes. Well, I think I'm fine with that. I'll double check just to make sure, but I don't think there's any issue with that.
Okay, cool.
I'll give you first cut. We also have one too. So if it fails on your side, let me know.
Okay. Hey, we have HA system.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you guys. Thank you guys.
Bye, everyone.
Talk to you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.